What if I told you the men and women who shaped America's dreams were secretly some of the most cruel, dangerous, and morally bankrupt people on earth? That's the question Ron Howard, the man who believes in kindness and restraint, was finally willing to answer. He grew up inside the machine, and he saw the truth. Hit that subscribe button now. We begin with the two actors, whose behavior was so vast, so unchecked, that they established the blueprint for Hollywood's moral decay. Errol Flynn, the predator, shielded by charm. Before there was James Bond or Jack Sparrow, there was Errol Flynn, the swashbuckling hero who embodied charm, danger, and reckless desire. On screen, he was the perfect adventurer. Off screen, he was something closer to a predator. Flynn arrived in Hollywood in the 1,930 seconds and became an overnight sensation. But by 1942, his reputation turned poisonous when two teenage girls accused him of statutory rape. The trial, splashed across every newspaper, became a spectacle. Flynn laughed through testimony, mocking the charges as if his own stardom made him untouchable. Warner Brothers hired elite lawyers, and studio executives secretly paid witnesses to vanish. He was acquitted. But his behavior only worsened. Ron Howard once described reading about that trial as a turning point. When I realized Hollywood could protect monsters if they smiled for the camera. The tragedy of Flynn isn't just his actions. It's the institutional rot that formed around him. His trials proved that a powerful studio could successfully lobby the press, intimidate victims, and deploy legal resources to protect their highest-grossing asset, regardless of the moral cost. For years after his trial, the New York Times refused to refer to the charges, referring only to his personal troubles. Flynn's story became the original blueprint for Hollywood's moral decay, proof that charm can hide cruelty and that the system will protect the brand at any cost. John Wayne, the tyrant who wore his country like a costume. Few figures towered over Hollywood like John Wayne. To millions, he was the embodiment of America itself. But to Ron Howard, who grew up watching him, the reality behind that rugged image was far darker. Wayne was a bully who wore his country like a costume. He saw dissent as weakness and progress as betrayal. On film sets, he ruled with intimidation. Technicians who failed to meet his expectations were cursed out in front of everyone. Wayne's control extended beyond the camera. He used his immense power to pressure studio heads, demanding that actors or writers with known liberal views be removed from projects. He didn't just play a political hero. He tried to be a political gatekeeper. His cruelty extended beyond the workplace. His 1971 Playboy interview remains one of the most disturbing documents of Hollywood's golden age. He declared that Native Americans were selfishly keeping land, and that black people were not yet responsible enough for self-governance. The comments sparked outrage, but the studios remained silent. Wayne's legend was too profitable to challenge. These statements revealed not a patriot, but a man trapped in hate and an industry that quietly endorsed his tyranny. Ron Howard later studied his performance in The Searchers. It's terrifying because you can't tell where the role ends and the man begins. Faye Dunaway, the emotional terrorist. These two actors mastered the art of weaponizing their immense talent, using it not to elevate art, but to destroy the emotional environment and financial viability of the productions around them. If Errol Flynn embodied corruption and John Wayne symbolized ideological tyranny, then Faye Dunaway represented something colder: cruelty, wrapped in beauty. To Ron Howard, she was proof that evil didn't always come with violence. Sometimes it came through control, humiliation, and an ego so vast it crushed everyone around it. Dunaway's rise was meteoric, a goddess of cinema, icy and magnetic. But behind that brilliance, crew members spoke of her tantrums and the way she treated assistants as disposable. Her behavior on the set of Chinatown was notorious, but it continued for decades. While filming The Arrangement in 1969, Director Elia Kazan allegedly had a nervous breakdown trying to manage her demands. During Mommy Dearest, a film about abuse, ironically, she allegedly threw a vase, narrowly missing a camera operator, in a terrifying display of rage. The consensus was that Dunaway didn't demand respect, she demanded fear. This constant state of fear meant that creativity was impossible, and the daily sanity of her crew was the price paid for her genius. Ron Howard concluded that talent without empathy eventually destroys itself. Power without grace turns to poison. The system tolerated it because her performances were often genius, but the long-term cost on budgets, morale, and the careers of the directors she alienated was catastrophic. Marlon Brando, the destroyer of art. Apathy as a weapon. Marlon Brando's evil was more subtle and, perhaps, more insulting to the entire artistic process. His genius was undeniable, but he came to treat filmmaking with a corrosive, profound apathy. Brando's behavior turned his artistic temperament into a weapon aimed directly at budgets, deadlines, and the careers of the people around him. The most infamous example is Apocalypse Now, 1979. Brando was paid a record $1 million per week, but arrived late, massively overweight, and unprepared, having not read the book or even memorized his lines. Director Francis Ford Coppola was already in a fragile state, and Brando's self-sabotage was financial and mental torture. Coppola was forced to shoot his scenes in the dark and spend weeks improvising a character arc because Brando refused to commit. The production nearly collapsed entirely due to this apathy. He was infamous for refusing to learn his lines, relying instead on cue cards taped to other actors' foreheads or strategically placed on set. This self-indulgence cost studios millions and destroyed the professional environment. Ron Howard would have seen this as the ultimate disrespect. It wasn't the cruelty of Dunaway, it was the laziness of Brando, which showed a complete disregard for the hundreds of people whose livelihoods depended on his professionalism. His greatest crime wasn't hatred, it was the willful squandering of genius and the financial terrorism inflicted upon his own art form. Which form of set cruelty is the most corrosive to art? Faye Dunaway's emotional terrorism and need for control, or Marlon Brando's apathy and self-indulgence that destroyed multi-million-dollar productions? Roman Polanski, the system's hypocrite. For Ron Howard, the name Roman Polanski represented the one truth Hollywood never wanted to face, that brilliance can coexist with evil. Polanski's films, Rosemary's Baby, Chinatown, made him a genius in the eyes of critics. But the darkness that haunted his movies wasn't fiction. It was a reflection of himself. In 1977, the illusion shattered when Polanski was arrested for the sexual assault of a minor. Before sentencing, he fled the United States. Hollywood split in two. Some condemned him, others defended him as a tortured artist. For Howard, then a young filmmaker, the reaction was devastating. They spoke of art while a child's life was broken. Polanski's exile became one of Hollywood's greatest moral stains. He continued directing abroad, even winning an Oscar in 2003. The debate surrounding that win, whether art can be separated from the artist, still rages today. Howard refused to stand. "I thought of that girl alone at 13, and how applause must sound to her ears," he said. The industry's willingness to separate genius from guilt infuriated him. Ron Howard famously told Vanity Fair, "A monster doesn't become less monstrous because he can frame a shot." The defense of Polanski by his peers proved Ron Howard's greatest fear. Hollywood forgives anything, as long as the lighting is good. Polanski's story embodies everything that poisoned the Golden Age. A system that protects the artist and abandons the victim. Ron Howard saw 5 different forms of evil, which is the most dangerous to society: the ideological tyranny of John Wayne, or the systemic protection afforded to the genius of Roman Polanski. For Ron Howard, these stories were never about revenge. They were warnings. He spent his career championing kindness, precisely because he knew the violence and chaos of the past. He learned that the real monsters aren't fictional. They're the men and women who the system allows to stay unaccountable. He believes that the true legacy of the Golden Age isn't the glamour. It's the institutional decay that allowed these cycles of abuse and arrogance to flourish. The true measure of an industry is not the awards it gives, but the lives it chooses to protect. Hollywood's Golden Age wasn't built of gold at all. It was built on silence, exploitation, and broken lives hidden behind fame. And as he once said, "The scariest monsters aren't in horror films. They're the ones the spotlight protects." If you appreciate the moral courage to speak truth to power, hit that like button and subscribe for more unfiltered film history.